Minister Motley, Premier Alden, friends, most of you I know I've met before in the past. It's really a pleasure to be here. We're going to start with a very short video, which basically positions what I'm going to say after the video. I just want to say that without any collaboration, the title of my topic is actually Development and Transformation. So the fact that the Prime Minister's already laid the foundation, you know where I'm going to go with this. But let's roll the video, and then I'll finish up after.
(2040). This is our Caribbean, the world's first climate-smart zone, a collection of economies that thrive on renewable energy and technological innovations to confront the effects of climate change and create spaces for its people to be safe, productive, and happy. We are proud to be economies that are at one with our planet while taking advantage of the fourth industrial revolution. In Caribbean 2040, policies are anchored in a sound institutional framework that allows citizens to move freely, experience an improved rule of law, and give expression to their creativity and talents. In Jamaica, economic stability is the norm. Productivity has grown so much that the GDP per capita has increased by 250% since 2018. Innovation is the norm. Tech-savvy youth are everywhere, and the orange economy is world famous. In the Bahamas, climate change risks are better confronted through strong adaptation for the 700-plus islands in the archipelago. More than 40% of the nation's coastlines have been reinforced to prevent erosion, creating numerous specialized jobs focused on climate adaptation, infrastructure, and resilience. The unemployment rate is less than 2%. Educated national youth strive to be innovative entrepreneurs, valuing stronger family units. Because of this, crime is at an all-time low. In Barbados, innovative battery storage technologies have transformed the landscape. Public transportation is powered through solar energy. 80% of the island's energy is created from renewable sources, creating thousands of jobs while reducing energy spending. LED streetlights illuminate highways and communities at night, saving millions of dollars each year for the government, business, and consumers. In Guyana, as one of the hemisphere's leading oil and gas producers, Guyana is able to export 90% of its fuel production while utilizing safe and environmentally friendly methods. Guyana's energy and forest wealth has been carefully managed, ensuring smart investments on behalf of its citizens. Supported by a robust broadband infrastructure, citizens' interactions with the government are conducted online in a more effective, efficient, and transparent way. Wi-Fi services are free for all, and roaming charges no longer exist. In Suriname, government spending is highly effective and efficient, thanks to the introduction of the Economic Stabilization Program, birthed from its own people. Also, modern farming methods, to include water-resistant seeds, have increased food production yields, making Suriname a significant global food source. In Trinidad and Tobago, now one of the world's leading technology hubs, it's home to more than 300 private sector businesses that have prospered with the development and application of innovative technologies in energy, IT, and business services. A major regional export is advisory services based on music, cuisine, sports, and fashion, with creative icons demonstrating how to effectively extract revenue from intellectual property. The nation is still world famous for organic chocolate and specialized branded liqueurs. And it all started here.
The naked truth is that for a small hydrocarbon-based economy like Trinidad and Tobago, fiscal adjustment and economic diversification are no longer just options. They are essential requirements for long-term growth and stability, and I dare say survival.
As small island developing states are at great risk of climate change, we must develop new mindsets and protocols in this era of superstorms.
We have made a commitment to the prosperity of Jamaicans. and we're going to do that through economic growth and job creation.
Haven is voor de regering geen optie. We hebben als volk en land een veelheid aan potenties.
We're a state that is proud of its place as a reliable and cooperative partner in the international efforts to protect the Earth's environment.
The government's vision is now one of Barbados becoming a 100% renewable energy island within the next 50 years.
Change is coming to our Caribbean. The choices we make today will be the history for tomorrow. We must write the future now. 2040, here we come. To get there, we must jump. Jump, Caribbean.
Thank you. We produced this video earlier this year to show to our governors, which are the ministers of finance across the region, to get them to grasp this notion that Prime Minister Motley was trying to share, that we're in a position of thinking about transforming the region. We're no longer at the point of incremental change, but we're at the point of exponential change. Incremental meaning, growing by maybe 10% a year, but exponential meaning we want to do what we're doing 10 times better and 10 times faster. So the whole idea of trying to get a vision of where we could be in 2040, which seems to be a shared vision in this room, is to produce something like this that shows where are those elements where, one, we're lacking, and two, we're seeing the way forward, and how can we get there. Prime Minister Motley also used this phrase, let's leapfrog, and that's been sort of in the back of our minds too, that we need to leapfrog. But why do we start here? So from where we sit in the IDB, obviously the IDB has 26 borrowing member countries, Latin America and the Caribbean, and we are 6 English-speaking and 1 Dutch-speaking Caribbean country, at least in my region. There's also Belize and Haiti in another department, but we thought we need to start thinking about where are those areas where we can bring the most thought-provoking ideas to address some of the challenges that the region's facing. And one of the things we started out looking at first was, do we have an innovative private sector? And I must say, the data from 2014, when we did the survey of over 4,000 firms across the region, 16 countries in the region, including some OECS countries, we found some not very compelling data, compelling in a negative way. So, for example, of all of these firms, only about a third were actually using any kind of innovation. And of all of the firms, only 10% had anything sort of like a research and development division or department. So that suggests that the reason why the region has been very slow to innovate and adapt technology is pretty much rooted in the way our private sector is working alongside the public sector. Now, what Premier Alden shared with us this morning is something that's also telling, because we also know that almost every government in this region operates in a non-e-platform. So the notion of e-government, being able to pay your taxes online, being able to obtain any sort of public service online is pretty foreign in our region. So we've been looking at, and I'm happy to hear him also talk about the Estonian experience, because we're actually taking groups of policymakers from this region to Estonia to experience what the transformation has been in Estonia and how it can be translated into the Caribbean. Now, Jamaica has taken the step to actually declare itself as wanting to be the first digital economy in the Caribbean, starting with a national ID system. So I think it's going to really pave the way for Jamaica doing business differently and interacting with its citizens differently. And it's not just about efficiency. I was just interviewed outside, and one of the questions was, well, what is this going to do for people? Why are you at a BIT conference, and why do you think this is transformative? Well, I think it's transformative because we need to liberate citizens from drudgery and interactions that add no value to anything we do. Why would you want to stand in line in a tax revenue office to get a piece of document that you may have to take to another office to register a car, for example? Why can't I stay in my bed like the Estonians and vote in an election? Why can't I do from my laptop at home, apply for a new passport if I need that? Why can't I figure out what's the traffic pattern on Barbican Road before I set out to do a transaction in town from home before I set out on that journey? So there are ways in which we're living and the ways in which we're doing things that sort of let the government off the hook, because we're not reminding them that there are other ways to do business. And if you translate this notion of technology adaptation across whole spheres of industries in this region, including the very important ones of energy, agriculture, health, education, tourism, we can then start envisaging what we were showing in the video, which is a very, very different way of doing business in the Caribbean. So today, I think, is a great opportunity for bringing together not just the fintech part of this equation, but also to think about what is it and what do we need to get more leaders like Prime Minister Motley to jump on this bandwagon of transformation and stop the incremental approaches to change. I'd like to say the IDB is very much, I think, in the forefront of bringing these ideas to our clients, to every one of the governments that we're working with in the region to sort of make these changes happen. And why are we doing this? I think we're doing this because when we look at the data of the last 30 years, and you can do the same, GDP per capita of people in the Caribbean is a downward sloping curve. Countries of similar size around the world, the curve is upward sloping. So there must be something about not just what we're doing and how we're doing it that needs to change, but if it's going to be that transformation that we envisage, we need to really think differently about everything we do. And it doesn't just begin with government, it starts with primary school education. Is it still appropriate to put kids in a classroom with a blackboard and chalk? Is that the right way to teach kids today when we know that 3-year-olds can hack into your phones to figure out how to get to a YouTube video that I don't know how my niece does it, but somehow she manages to get my phone open to find a YouTube video that she wants to watch. So if a 3-year-old has the dexterity to use a tablet or a phone, we can't then put her in a classroom behind a desk with a chalk and a blackboard and a teacher. It just doesn't work for today. We also know that our educational outcomes are well below what they need to be internationally if we're going to produce the kind of people who are going to drive change in this region and build the kind of 2040 vision that was exhibited. One statistic I like to share from Jamaica, and again, it's not a good one, but it's one that I like to remind policymakers of because it says how big this digital divide is. Of all the kids in high school in Jamaica, the graduating class in any one year, only 30% of those kids have the ability, meaning they're coming out with any sort of skill set, to get them into a tertiary level institution, which means that 70% of all of the kids in Jamaica being funneled through high schools are going to be left out, right? So that's a recipe for productivity declines well into the future because we're not producing the kind of student and the outcomes so that those kids can then find themselves in a position where they can get higher level skills, but also be able to cope with the digital divide. And to tell you how real this is, last week Friday, I probably had the most challenging and the most difficult speaking engagement I've ever had in Jamaica in my 5 years there. And I was speaking to a group of 20 kids, and they were between the ages of 18 and 24. And this was a technology camp, and this was an opportunity for these kids to be exposed to innovation and digital technology and so on. But the group of kids, this cohort of kids, were not from Campion College or AISK or all of the good schools in Jamaica. These were kids who had fallen in hard times with the law. They come from vulnerable backgrounds. They were from rural areas. So my first question was, how many of you have smartphones? 3 hands out of 20 went up. Except the young lady in front of me said, Miss, everybody here has a phone. But there was no connection between smart and phone as a notion. So if we're going to be doing all of our business on a smartphone or a laptop or a computer, there are many, many young people across our region, and I don't think this is unique to Jamaica, that have no concept of how powerful this device is. I like to remind people that when the computer that was used at the time that the first man went to the moon, that computer fit into a room like this size. Our iPhones now have more computing power than that same computer that sent guys to the moon. So Moore's law, every 2 years, the computational capacity of computers is doubling. And that allows technology not just to be moving faster, but change to be moving faster, which means that all of the applications that can be done digitally, whether we apply them in agriculture or health or whatever, things are happening rapidly. And so if we hang on to the old ways of doing things, we will find ourselves locked into our continued low growth and inability to compete and to be doing things on the global stage. Why am I really excited about this particular event is because I've been following Gabrielle and this bit company for a while, and I've been thinking about how are they really going to penetrate this market. So some of the comments that Rowdy made about the friction between, say, the financial sector and BIT really has to do, too, with how our financial sector has evolved over time. And we know that in the Caribbean, fintech, with very few exceptions, has been very, very underdeveloped. I mean, a lot of the banking in the Caribbean is still being carried out the old-fashioned way. Lots of bricks and mortar, lots of branches, lots of people standing up in lines in a bank. And very few people actually using technology or their smartphones to do the financial transactions that they need. So here is a disruptor, and I think it's up to the regulators to figure out a solution, but I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Just think about all of the people who are currently excluded from the financial sector. We like to think that financial intermediation in the Caribbean is widespread, but there are whole pockets of communities where people do not have bank accounts and people don't go into banks, and transactions are still being taken place on a cash level. It's pretty astonishing to think that there are people who drive around in armored vehicles in Jamaica going from one enterprise to the next with cash, but that still happens. And that's probably happening for all kinds of reasons, including tax avoidance. But the fact that that's happening in 2018 says a lot about opportunities for companies like BIT. So I think on the financial inclusion side, I think we're onto something here. I think it's very exciting. I'm hoping that once the discussion with the financial panel opens up, some of the examples of what's happening in Jamaica will come to the fore, because there's been a lot of work on, say, a similar mobile money wallet without having a bank account for at least one institution that I know of, and I think others. So I think we're on to a real important innovation and development in the Caribbean that is worthy of supporting, and we want to see it flourish throughout. And just finally, I think what the IDB is doing in this sphere is looking at not just in the fintech sphere, but also applications of blockchain that have sort of been talked about earlier, land registries, educational certificates, CXE. So the CXE Council is now thinking about a passport, which will be an app on individuals' phones that will stay with them throughout life, the same way a labor market certificate. So educational certificates, for example, in the skills and apprenticeship project in Jamaica, all of those participants will have an app on their phone, and this is a sort of a document that can be layered, and you carry around your credentials with you. So every time you go to a new employer, you don't have to write off to UE and say, I need you to send a copy of my transcript to Ansa McCall because I'm looking for a job there. But you can actually use you have a digital record of your academic credentials. I think we're just scraping the surface of how important this innovation is and how important technology is for delivering services to everybody in this region, but also thinking about what kind of Caribbean we want to hold up to the rest of the world and how we work as a region and how modern we want to be and how integrated we want to be. So I really applaud some of the innovations that are already happening in Barbados and in Cayman, and we're going to be following you, and maybe I can be a Caymanian citizen sometime soon so I can sit in my bed and vote from home. But I think soon this will be the future. No Caribbean person would need to go into a public tax office or passport office or land registry office to get any transaction, because that work will be done. Now, this brings up the specter that was also referred to by PM of what will happen to the future of work. And some statistics came out yesterday because there's been a lot of back and forth about, in 2030, how many jobs will be swallowed up by artificial intelligence. And while I think that's a real phenomenon, and it is happening in our region already, artificial intelligence and technology will also create opportunities for new jobs. So while some jobs are going to go away, by the way, we don't want to see those jobs coming back because those jobs are not really fulfilling. The use of robots on factory floors to do things, package, take those boxes out to the front where the customer is waiting for those boxes. Why have men or women do that when there are robots that can do that? And what's fascinating, if you look at a country like Japan, the companies that are doing most of the R&D in robotics are actually Honda and Toyota, because the specific need in Japan is how are we going to cope with the aging population and the fact that human beings will need to have companions in their homes because families are small, the kids have gone elsewhere, and the 90-year-old is living alone in an apartment and needs help. And they are building robots with voice and hopefully eventually with cognitive abilities to be able to look after old people. So there's a lot going out there, a lot going on in the world in terms of research and development, and we need to figure out what are the solutions we need in the Caribbean to deal specifically with the challenges we have. And if you just think about agriculture in the context of climate change, we need to figure out how to grow food that's impervious to climate change. So if in New Jersey there are warehouses growing green vegetables, why can't we be doing that here in the region? So there's plenty out there, and the IDB is very pleased to be on this platform and to be given this particular speaking post, and we're happy to have sponsored this event, and I look forward to the conversation and interacting with all of you later. Thank you very much.